Welcome back to, or for the first time, to the fourth episode of Triple Overtime. You gotta like triple O-T, right? Is that how? As always, it is me, your fabulous host of the week, Austin Snyder, as always, with my amazing co-hosts, my brothers in arms, Amar Burton, Dillon Holloway. How you guys doing today? Are you excited about this week's episode?
Of course, always excited.
How could you not be?
Yeah, jacked up, ready to go, ready to run through a wall, man.
So it's been a week. For those of you who don't know or think that we just make this magic in a matter of days or whatever, we do shoot week to week, one night a week, and then our lovely editor goes to work and puts it all together to post it for us. So how you guys been? How's your week been? How's your bracket doing? Are you guys ready to jump off of buildings yet, or are you feeling pretty confident about what's going on? How's work? How's the families? What's going on, boys?
Well, real life is doing a lot better than my bracket is doing. I'll tell you that much. If real life mirrored my bracket, then I'd be in some trouble right now. So I've still got Gonzaga winning it all. I had them over Illinois, which obviously Illinois did not make it. So I'm in like 8th place, though, is the thing. So I don't know if it's even enough points because I think a bunch of people picked Gonzaga. So I'm probably going to finish like, maybe top 5 or something, but nothing to write home about. So I had an amazing first weekend.
Right.
Amazing first weekend. Best first weekend I've ever had. And then I got every single one wrong the next round, basically, except for Gonzaga and Baylor. Like everybody lost. There's so many red X's everywhere, all over my bracket. But outside of that, I mean, real life is going okay. I'm coming up on finals, going to school at Rutgers for sports journalism. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, I do well on those. And other than that, just trying to enjoy every day as best I can.
How much time do you have left? I mean, like how many more years or how many more semesters? Or
about 47 years left of school.
Oh, perfect.
There.
Yeah.
And
keep in mind, he's becoming a journalist.
This is like med school.
I don't know.
How about you, Amar? How's the boys doing? How's life, buddy?
They're doing great. Okay, before I get into that, okay, I gotta say to all of our viewers and listeners, the triple OGs, as I call y'all, because when triple overtime blows up and NBA veteran Ron Harper Jr. is telling people like, yo, I used to go to school with Dillon Holloway. You guys who are listening to this right now, you're going to be the ones who are first on, the triple OGs, right? So gotta say, I have to apologize to y'all because last week I said that Michigan Florida State game, Sweet 16 game, would be good. I think I might have promised it would be epic. I said it might go to overtime. Apparently, I forgot we were talking about 2021 college basketball. I thought we were talking about like 1993 college football or something. I'm thinking like Michigan, Florida State, Charlie Ward and Tim Biaka-Batuka and Tyrone Wheatley. And I'm seeing these two have no idea who I'm talking about. That game was not good. Michigan stomped Florida State, which I had Florida State going kind of far in the tournament. So brings me back to the bracket, which is not doing good. I'm like trying to not get last place in our little bracket pool. But anyway, so there's that. The kids, though, they're doing good. So I think I've told you guys, or told the listeners, viewers, that I've got 9-month-old twin boys, and one of them just stood up on his own this week. So
what?
Yeah,
that's incredible, man. At 9 months, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're both crawling. One of them stood up, and so in their little wrestling matches that they have, it's giving him like a huge advantage, like his ability to stand and like deliver like the the elbow drop and the people's elbow and the knee drops and everything. So that's the big development around this house.
That's incredible, man. I'll tell you, what really has always helped my boys we will with the third one now for those of you that may just be tuning in or didn't catch it on some of the other episodes. I myself have 3 boys, have a newborn that will be 3 months old on the 10th of April. So, but what's helped me with all of my boys in terms of the walking, there's like these little, sometimes they're cars or planes or whatever that the kids can sit on and kind of scoot around on, but they have like a tall, almost like a walker thing on the back that I would put them on, and then they would walk with that. And that, as well as like you can get like little lawnmowers and stuff, but it gives them just enough stability to stand up and then helps them get used to it. Both of my boys, 11 months on the dot, were walking. So I suggest it, man. It'd help out big time. So and it's funny you mentioned with the wrestling matches. So would you say that the one is walking at this current point is almost like Andre the Giant, right? Like he's bigger, he's standing tall, everything, but soon enough the other one's going to start walking, and then he's going to give him that body slam. And now I say this because just a few days, Dillon, Amar actually as well, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are 4 days removed from the 25th anniversary of Hulk Hogan's body slam of Andre the Giant in WrestleMania.
We are. I didn't know that. Yeah.
I'm not a math guy. I'm a journalist, so I'd have to look that up.
Well, then I'm telling you that we are. It's a pretty incredible.
You're asking me or you're telling me? If you're telling me,
I was trying to confirm it, but yes, I am telling you.
I don't have the numbers up in front of me right now.
Yeah, as of a few days before this recording, maybe as much as a week, we hit the 25th anniversary. For those of you younger viewers that may not understand the significance of that, it was an 11-minute match, and I believe it was WrestleMania 3.
It was 3, yeah.
Okay, WrestleMania 3, where Hulk Hogan, the mighty man that he is, let me say that, picked up the Giant, the 9th wonder of the world, the freak, Andre the Giant.
8th wonder of the world.
8th wonder of the world. I'm the 9th wonder
China.
of the world. Yeah, no, I'm the 9th wonder of the world.
No, 9th wonder was China. You can be 10th.
Yeah, I'll be 10. Anyways, picked him up, body slammed him, dropped the leg drop, pinned him for the win. So that is a huge, monumentous event that it happened in sports, in wrestling, and it's something that echoes the chambers of the WWF/WWE legend for all of eternity. So I just thought that'd be kind of a
cool
anniversary
thing to bring up. Did you say it was?
What's that?
What
the
anniversary?
25th.
No, because it happened in 87.
Oh,
yeah. And I'm not 25, so.
So how long? Again, I think we made mention of this.
March 29th, 1987, Pontiac, Michigan. Yep.
By the second episode, we did make sure to make mention that none of us know how to do math when it comes to the years.
Very clear.
So, and a side note, for anyone who isn't interested in pro wrestling or Andre the Giant, if you haven't seen the Andre the Giant HBO documentary yet, it's highly recommended. It's very well.
I need to watch that
documentary. Very well edited. Really gives you some inside scoop on how he was as a person and just what he went through to have the career that he did. You know, like traveling, being that big, he was in pain like all the time.
Oh yeah,
so it really gives you some like behind the scenes, not just and then he came out and he was awesome. Like we all know how awesome he was, but this kind of gives you a glimpse of the man, outside of the ring. So,
and that's one guy, cool. And a lot of that could come just obviously because there was no social media back then. But I mean, that's definitely for me and someone who grew up as a very diehard wrestling fan. I don't really follow it now, but Dillon will tell you we spent hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years watching, participating in our own little makeshift wrestling matches, everything. But Andre the Giant especially was just someone that was such a ridiculously huge personality as well as human being, that not a lot of people know a lot about like his personal life,
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people understand that the pain that guy walked around with and just like being that big is not necessarily the gift that many believe it is. And that goes same with football players, basketball players, baseball players, a lot of it. I mean, look at a lot of these big, huge 7'5", 7'6" basketball players. In fact, almost every single one that we ever see hit the league, they usually have pretty short careers. They're constantly dealing with injuries. Yao Ming being a prime example of that. It's tough. It's tough being that big. So trust me, being only 5'6" myself, I take a lot of joy in the fact that I can walk around normally and not have to worry so much about injury in just my day-to-day life like those big guys do. However, we are going to get into our episode here. So make sure you stick around. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, drop a comment, join the conversation. Make sure you stick around till the very end of this video. This is what we will now dub. You can join the Triple OG Club, right? Yeah? The Triple OG Club by sticking around to the end of this video, especially because our very own Dillon Divine Holloway will be having a nice segment for us. And man, he brings the heat every time he does. Amar's going to be our question guy today. So first, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors, if you will. And when we get back, Amar's going to hit us with some questions and we're going to just really get into it, okay? Hell yeah, boys. Let's get it.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Enjoying Triple Overtime? Do you like hearing about professional wrestling as well? Well, then we have the show for you. From the makers of Triple Overtime as part of the Dill Industries worldwide YouTube channel comes May I Take This Bump? Tag team partners Dillon Divine and Matt Ecstatic relive their glory days and talk about the latest dealings in professional wrestling. Check it out.
And we are back, like Oscar De La Hoya, who's trying to come back and fight in July for some reason, and he's like almost 50 and whatever. Anyway,
have you seen all that money that Tyson and all them old dudes are making?
Yeah, there's the money. I'm not one to tell someone, you need to hang it up, except for in the combat sports, because it could get dangerous if you are fighting too long and you hang on too long and you're too old and those reflexes are gone.
Oh yeah. That's how you get punch drunk, buddy.
Yeah. You get in some situation that you think you could have handled 20 years ago and you can't handle now. And it can get bad. So, but we're going to talk about the NCAA tournament. Final Four is coming up this weekend. We talked about how bad our brackets are, but good part is when your bracket's done, you can just watch the games and have fun and not necessarily worry about who you picked and all of that. So
I've been doing that for like the last 2 weeks then.
Since I hit submit.
Yeah.
So our Final Four, Gonzaga, UCLA on one side, Baylor and Houston on the other. Who do you think is gonna win the whole thing? Let's start with Dillon.
I still got Gonzaga winning it all. I picked them when I did my bracket, and I'm picking them now. They have not really broken a sweat yet, it seems like. I know a lot of people say that Baylor can actually test them well. Baylor would be the biggest challenge, but I mean, I think at this point, Gonzaga, unless like some catastrophic series of injuries or something unforeseen happens, I think Gonzaga's
knock on some wood, Dillon. What are you doing?
I'm knocking on it right now. Don't worry, I'm at a wooden desk. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, Gonzaga looks like they got it. To me, at least, they've looked so good in every game in the tournament, and they just have so many weapons and so many skillful players, and their offense flows so well. And the thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is how good their defense is, right? Mm-hmm. Like defensively, they really got it done against USC. They shut them down. Like they turned them over so many times, and USC was a team that a lot of people said like could give Gonzaga some problems because, they're one of the biggest teams, average height wise in the country, so they're like, maybe Gonzaga could have an issue with that, but it did not seem like that. Gonzaga.
On top of that, USC was on absolute fire coming into that game. Yeah. They were rolling, came off of huge wins. I agree, Dillon, 100%.
It was never in doubt to me, that game. So
I thought USC could maybe give them a game because USC had the best individual player that Gonzaga's faced in
Right.
Evan Mobley. And so I thought, okay, he's good enough to like make this close. And he's so good defensively, Gonzaga's not going to just have their way at the rim because he's a rim protector. But yeah, I mean, they blew their doors off. So Austin, I'm guessing you also got Gonzaga winning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here's the thing. To me, this year Gonzaga's team reminds me a lot of the Spurs dynasty. It just does. You've got a big man in a forward in Timmy that just I wouldn't say that he's necessarily like super flashy. He's not, the guy that everybody, I mean, you can't necessarily point to one super memorable dunk or whatever, but the guy just gets it done. He's very effective on the boards. He's incredible in the post. He can shoot from the outside. He's 6'10". He's very long and lanky. He's 235, so he's got some meat on his bones. But he does remind me a lot of Tim Duncan. In that
Timmy
sense,
Duncan.
The way that he plays the game, the way that everything, he has a little bit more personality than Tim Duncan. So I will, I'm not making exact comparisons here. But on top of that, Jalen Suggs, I talked about him last time I brought up Gonzaga. I think he should stay one more year. He's got a few things that he needs he's a little rough around the edges going into the league, but he's a very good player. He's great when it comes to scoring. He does a lot of the things that don't necessarily show up in the box score at the end of the night. He plays just with a lot of heart. And then obviously you've got Corey Kispert. Who's a forward. He's a senior this year. He's got a ton of experience. And that guy, especially Kisper, you like watching him play. I wouldn't even have to know who he was to understand that he was a senior. You can see by the way he leads the team. You can see how it doesn't, even in this tournament, it doesn't seem like any moment is getting too big for him. And the three of those guys together with everybody else that's contributing are just a well-oiled machine on both sides of the floor. I think the only team at this point that could give them a run for their money is Baylor. And I don't even know that they can do it. I don't, because as you guys both mentioned, if there was any team that they were going to face that I would have thought, at least pushed it to the to the final minute or seconds or whatever, it would have been USC, and they didn't. I mean, Gonzaga is just on a whole other level right now. And going into this tournament, our thought process was, it's either Gonzaga or the field, right? I mean, that's the only bet that you can make at this point. And I think that was the wise, smart thought process on it, because Gonzaga is just, they're head and shoulders above everybody else. It's not just the fact that they're uber talented, like stacked with talent, and the three that I mentioned, but they play so flipping well together. They just do. They know where each other's at on the floor. They know they switch without thinking about it. They always make that second pass as if it's just second nature. I mean, it's just such amazing team basketball to watch. So I don't see how they lose this tournament.
I'm going with Baylor. I think that for one,
Austin and Dillon have left the chat.
Is good. I mean, as good as Gonzaga has looked. I mean, I'm looking at who they face. It's like Norfolk State, Oklahoma, Creighton, USC. They haven't faced a team near, I think, the level that Baylor can play at. I think Baylor's defense, their backcourt, coaching, like they are, like both of you have said, like as the one team I think that has a real legit shot at beating Gonzaga. And I just see that. I don't know, I've always kind of gone off like the hunch, like storyline thing. And I think Baylor kind of completing this journey from like the lowest of lows with, I mean, the murder and drug dealing scandals at the school, and Scott Drew gets there, and he's been there for 18 years now, and is finally getting them like to that top level, completing the the turnaround and getting a championship and just establishing them as like an elite program this year. I just see that. I don't know, that's just kind of what I see happening. So, I mean, yeah, it is kind of, Gonzaga versus everyone else. I just don't know if they've really been tested yet, like the test they're going to get from Baylor. And one thing I heard on another podcast, someone was saying that even if Gonzaga doesn't win at all, they're still like a top 10 team like in the last, like 20 years. Like, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah. Easily.
I don't know if they don't win it all, like if they lose to UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I couldn't really put them in that. There's been so many good teams. Like, what'd you say, last 20 years? Top 10 team.
But one of the examples they brought
up, like
up,
oddly specific too.
I think it was like that 2015 Kentucky team that like they went undefeated up until they lost to, I think, Wisconsin.
I think they would be
so good throughout the whole season. They had so much talent. Like they still put them in that top 10.
I don't think we could put them in the same ranking as the teams actually did win the championship. I think they'd be the best team to not win it when they should have in a long time. They'd be one of those.
But that's so.
You remember, like
for me,
the NFL used to do like the missing rings thing. We're talking about like the Buffalo Bills or the Minnesota Vikings. They'd be one of those teams, right? We wouldn't be talking about Gonzaga in 40 years if they lose to UCLA.
Yeah.
If they complete the perfect season, we're going to be talking about them in 40 years.
Of course, but that's so tough to me because it's like, you're not wrong, Dillon, but that's such an unfair thing. It really is. And we don't set the rules. I get it, but it's just, it is very unfair because this team has had an absolute historical season, a historical run, everything through the tournament. And because they don't win one game or they don't win the last two games, all of a sudden, like, it's not a good team, or it's not a historical team, or it's not one of the 10 greatest teams to play or to grace the court in the last 20 years or whatever, especially in this tournament compared to like the NBA playoffs, where you're in 5 or 7 game series and everything, where you're going to get a better indicator of who the best team actually was any given night, So it'd be hard for me to say that, some low-seeded championship team who just so happened to get on a run or whatever is somehow better collectively or overall than this Gonzaga team solely because they didn't win the championship. I just don't buy into that conversation that all of a sudden this team is better overall with the entire body of work just because they won the championship and Gonzaga didn't.
Well, what if they like absolutely get throttled? What if they go and they play Baylor and they get destroyed?
I mean, every team has a bad night.
That'll be the memory.
To say, what if UCLA?
I understand if they lost
the entire thing.
I'll understand if they lost. Well, UCLA is not going to win the entire thing.
But what if they do? Is UCLA all of a sudden in that conversation for top 10?
I'd say best tournaments ever. Yes,
I'd say it doesn't hurt their legacy too much. But yeah, like you said, if they get blown out, then yeah, that's a different conversation. And it's
if it's like
especially if they get blown out by UCLA or Baylor, because it's like the narrative is going to go back to Gonzaga killed all these mid-major teams, and then when they got to the big boys, they couldn't handle it. And
so on the flip side of that, if and when Gonzaga does finish this undefeated season and wins the championship, are they considered a blue blood?
I don't know. We need to have this conversation. We were talking about this. Wasn't it off the air, or did we talk about?
No, we did a little bit of it during our opening.
What is a blue blood? Maybe that's a segment for next week.
We talked about we talked about Syracuse, kind of being in that just because they're constantly in contention. They do have a championship to their name that's recent. All of those things, and so I would think that if Syracuse at least gets the nod, albeit maybe a small one for it, you've got to put Gonzaga there. Because Gonzaga has consistently been a 1, 2, or 3 seed for how long now?
But I can't call them a blue blood because as recently as, within the decade, they were still like an upstart. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Kentucky, who's been, powerhouse for decades. And yeah, Gonzaga has been good for, the last decade or so, but they were still kind of like the underdog team, and like we said a couple weeks ago, they just got to this level of like they're great. They know they're great. They're a consistent national title contender. It hasn't been like that for 20 years. And that's who I'd consider the blue bloods, Carolina.
But if we're talking if the recent success has to play heavily into that, Gonzaga has been to a championship game before. Like I said, how many times have they been the number 1 seed out of just the last 20 years? I mean, multiple times for sure. They've been top seeded teams multiple times. They've made multiple Sweet 16s, Elite Eights, whatever. So it's just, I get what you're saying, but if you add the championship to it, I think you got to kind of pull that curtain back for them.
I see blue blood is just as much about perception as it is accomplishment. And I think Gonzaga's got the accomplishments, especially if they win a championship this year, but the perception still isn't there. It's like they just recently came around to being considered like a powerhouse, as opposed to, like upstart underdog, cute Gonzaga.
Like having that staying power to, I get
their run started in what, like 99, 98, 99 when they first got to like national spotlight. So it has not been that long. Not compared to these other teams like North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky.
Yeah, but it's also not like they just like got good or hit the national spotlight 5 years ago either.
Yeah, I understand.
Kind of just in that middle.
But like they haven't been winning championships that whole time either, though. So it's like, or even making the Final Four the entire time.
They're like
it's like, how do you?
It's
like does getting to the Sweet 16 a bunch of times make you blue blood? Nah, probably not.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't say so. But like, so it's like, what defines a blue blood? Like, we need like a set of rules on this. It feels like on other sports, there's like those rules that everybody knows, right? On what makes a dynasty or what makes this or what makes that. We need the rules, and we'll come back.
Identifying a blue blood is about as tough as identifying a catch in the NFL. So,
one thing that blue bloods have is they have superstars, and Gonzaga's got a few stars on the team this year. Do you think one of them is the MVP of this tournament so far? And if not one of the Gonzaga guys, who is the NCAA tournament MVP up to this point?
For me, I've got I don't have Gonzaga just because they've obviously got standout players, but the whole team is really good, right? Like it's been like a collective, well-oiled machine. Like it's like, I think I compared them like a Peyton Manning Indianapolis Colts offense before. It's like the whole offense is just like in sync. It's amazing to watch their movements without the ball, their passing, anticipation, backdoor cuts, all that kind of stuff. For me, if I had to pick an MVP, it'd be Johnny Juzang of UCLA, just taking this 11th seed team to the Final Four. It's crazy. And like, just the guys had come up in big moments, and UCLA as a team has come up big in big moments, but he is the best player on the team. So if I was going to pick an MVP, it'd be him,
Okay. I would go kind of the best player on the best team so far route and go with Drew Timme. I think that, their last 3 games, he had like 30 and 13. He had 22 points in one game, and then he had, I think, 23 and like 3 steals. Like he's been outperforming his regular season averages, like in this tournament, like past their first round game, which was a round. He didn't have to do much. And Austin talked about how good he's been, and what kind of player he is, like the Tim Duncan kind of the focal point, like heart and soul of this team in a sense. Timmy'd be MVP so far, but I could see. It'll ultimately, end of the tournament, it'll have to go to someone that's on the title team. But yeah, Timmy's the guy so far. So who you got, Austin?
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. Timme is my pick. He's a consistent player, and he has been all season. But this tournament especially, he just kicked it into a whole nother gear. And this is a guy too that like isn't really getting as much NBA draft hype as I think that he should. He's still a somewhat younger guy. He's Willikers. He's a sophomore, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah, he's a sophomore. So he's a guy that, if he decided to, he could go back for another year or two or whatever to raise his draft stock. if he so chooses. But honestly, when it comes to this tournament, the guy has just been a cut above the rest. And you're right, he's been the absolute best player on the absolute best team. And I think without him, Gonzaga, maybe they get to this point, but it wouldn't be so convincingly. And I'm not even sure that they do. I'm not even sure that they get to the Elite Eight with the way that Timmy has played through this entire tournament and elevated this team. So he's got to be my MVP of the tournament so far.
Okay. Now, who do you guys think is the coach of the tournament so far? Like, who's done the most impressive coaching job? And it doesn't have to be a coach of a team that's still in it. You know, it could have been someone who, you know, just exceeded expectations, got their team, or, you know, did a great coaching job getting their team farther than people thought. So, like, who's like the coach of the NCAA tournament so far?
I got to say Paul Mills. You know, I don't want to consistently stick with Gonzaga because my immediate choice would be Mark Few because he's done a great job. But Paul Mills is the head coach for Oral Roberts. And I think just what he did with their run, it one takes exceptional play from some exceptional players, which they got, but more so than anything else, like that was coaching. That was coaching that put them into the position that they were in this tournament. And that was making sure that your guys were in at the right times, that you had the right five on the floor at any given situation. And man, time and time again, Paul Mills just made incredible decisions, just very, very smart decision. And even more so on that, especially given the story of Oral Roberts getting to the point that they did in this tournament, the fact that you hadn't heard of any like boneheaded decisions, right? So that's huge because especially when you're a low seeded team like that, you will get blasted if your coach is making poor choices and poor decisions regarding who he's putting on the court at any given time. And we heard none of that, you know, so that's huge. And I think he did an incredible job. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get any further than they did, and that's okay because they weren't ever supposed to be where they got anyway. So I'd have to give it up to him because, man, he just this entire tournament, he just seemed like he couldn't miss when it came to the coaching decisions that he made. So,
What about you, Dillon?
Can I do a tie for mine?
No, yeah, you can.
Can I do Mick Cronin and Wayne Tinkle? Wayne Tinkle, of course, the Oregon State Beavers coach, and Cronin, UCLA coach, just holding it down for the Pac-12. You know, a lot of people are talking a lot of smack about the Pac-12 coming into this tournament, but they've been the most impressive conference of the tournament thus far, I would say. Mm-hmm. And just both coaches did a phenomenal job. You know, Oregon State a 12 seed, UCLA an 11 seed, obviously, of just getting the most out of their players, getting the most out of their coaching staff, and like Austin said, making smart decisions, which is, I think, a very underrated facet of sports is when you get into those crunch time situations, right? When you're within 2 minutes and you need a basket and the hoop feels like it's like about that big and everybody's necks are getting a little bit tighter because it's a complete situation that you possibly have never been in before. It's what decisions do you make at that point that help you win or lose, right? So we've seen decisions make wins and losses. Of course, it takes the players as well, but decision making from a head coach is a big part of it. So I'd have to go with those two guys.
That's the thing with basketball, especially over and above any of the other major sports. Like in football, if a coach decides to go for it on the fourth down and they make it, then they're a genius, right? Or if they don't, then they're an idiot. In baseball, if a coach pulls a starting pitcher who's, you know, in his first 6, 7, or who's gone 7 or 8 innings and has 12 strikeouts and has only given up 3 hits, but he pulls them anyways, and your closer comes in and aces 3 guys and you guys shut the game down, or your closer comes in and gives up big, huge. I mean, it's super obvious to tell what's a smart decision and what's a not. Basketball isn't so much. There's a lot of personal accountability given to the players themselves. And so like I mentioned, you usually will only hear the roars when it's a poor decision. Why was this guy on the court when he shouldn't have been? What was the coach thinking? Whatever, whatever, whatever. You don't necessarily hear the praise for the X's and O's from the coach more so than it's like the player themselves gets the praise. So, I mean, that's just something to consider when watching these tournaments and watching the NBA playoffs and all of that stuff, is just remembering that, oh man, look, they put this guy in instead of the regular starting point guard in this situation, and man, it panned out. Or, hey, why did they pull their center when they should have gone with a tall ball lineup instead of a small ball? Again, something to really watch out for moving forward as you're watching basketball as a whole.
Round of applause, tip of the cap to Austin for not bringing up Pete Carroll just now. I was for sure you were going to bring up handing the ball, not running the ball on the goal line in the Super Bowl.
I try my best to forget that. But Pete Carroll is notorious for making some incredible, why would he do that? But it worked. But also going like, why would he do that? You know what I mean? So
yeah, started that. And I was like, he's going to talk about Pete Carroll.
At the end of the day, though,
who's your coach of who's your pick, Amar?
So my pick is Kelvin Sampson from Houston. Houston was a 2 seed with an All-American player in Quentin Grimes, but there's a reason why a lot of people, I think, didn't have them going to the Final Four and didn't have them as like a legit national title contender, is because they're not like super talented. We three of us, we were kind of, in our group chat during their last game, and I was like, this is like a team full of like Draymond Greens, right? Yeah. Like just these, scrappy, like deep defenders, rebounders, like not great shooters, and so for Sampson to kind of bring this group together. And, before the season started, some people don't know, they lost Caleb Mills, who he was like the preseason conference player of the year. He was supposed to be their guy, and he left. He's transferring to Florida State. And
a lot of people thought that he was going to make a real run this season, or like you said, in the preseason, that this guy was going to have the kind of standout season that would take notice in terms of NBA draft too.
So you lose arguably the best, most talented guy on your team, and you still put together this season where you're a 2 seed, you get to the Final Four. So I think, Sampson's just done an incredible job. I mean, he knocked off Jim Boeheim on his way here. He beat a really tough Rutgers team. Sorry, Dillon, on his way here. And I mean, they've got a shot against Baylor.
That was their toughest game so far of the tournament. It's against Rutgers.
Yeah,
but that's the thing, man, is you're right, Amar. They do have a shot. Houston is not a sexy team. Mm-hmm. They don't have the half court threes or the big dunks or whatever. But again, if you're someone who, Houston is a team to watch if you're someone who maybe wants to understand the intricacies of the game that separate like good players from great players, or good teams from great teams, because they do all of that stuff. They hit the boards with passion. They play incredibly tough defense. They play very slow-paced grit and grind offense. And not only do they play that style of basketball, but they do it incredibly efficient too. So hence why we see them in the position that they're at now.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if you remember that Texas Tech team a couple years ago, they got to the national title games. Like, they kind of remind me of that. It's like, as a program, Houston's got their history with Akeem and Clyde and Phi Samajama, but that was like 30 years ago. Like recently, they haven't been an elite, well-known. They're not a blue blood, right? So
does Houston have a chance against Baylor?
Yeah, they do. They do. And if they can upset Baylor and then get to the title game, it's going to be like that Texas Tech squad. A lot of people, maybe casual fans are just kind of like, wait, who? Houston? Like they're good at basketball, and they go out there and they make a good showing for themselves. And, I feel like all their games are going to be, even if they lose, they will still be competitive.
The thing about Houston is I'm not sure they really have been tested this tournament either, though, because if you look at like the teams they played, they're all double-digit seeds, and I know they're double-digit seeds that are playing above their
test, though.
What's that?
I think Syracuse in the tournament is always a test. I think
I get that, but these are all teams that are playing like above what we thought they were going to be. We haven't seen them knock off a higher seeded team yet. So if they can knock off Baylor, then yes, I'll agree with you. It's an amazing coaching job.
They avoided Illinois and Oklahoma State. Some of those teams in their bracket.
But see, if anything, that just kind of reinforces what I was just talking about in terms of those coaching decisions. And Houston is the poster child for it. That team, yes, give all of the kudos to the players for going out there and executing. But that team is in the position they're in because of incredible coaching decisions. I think I want to change my pick now because you're right. I mean, the guy, that right there is prime example of great coaching, of understanding your players' strengths and weaknesses, and putting your team in the best position to force the opposing team to play your basketball, to play your brand of basketball and not theirs. And kudos. You're right. Kudos. I think that's a great pick, Amar.
So we will pivot away from the NCAA tournament now, but we're going to stick with basketball and move over to the NBA. It seems like every, kind of hot conversation right now is about the Brooklyn Nets or the Los Angeles Lakers and how the Brooklyn Nets moves impact the LA Lakers. And is the Nets Lakers 2021 final inevitable? I mean, you remember for those years when it was like, it's going to be Golden State and Cleveland, and we knew it at the beginning of the year. Is that it's going to be Brooklyn, LA Lakers, or, do you guys think that someone else is going to sneak in there? Like, what are you thinking?
I wouldn't say it's the same as like Golden State, Cleveland, because that felt like, punch your ticket and everybody else is there just for fun kind of thing. Especially when Golden State got Kevin Durant, it's like, who's going to beat this team? Like I know the Nets also have Kevin Durant now and like James Harden and everything, but the East has some pretty formidable teams, and you never know what could happen barring injury kind of thing. So it's impossible for me to say that it's like automatic. And the Lakers also have their own injury problems with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and I don't think it's going to keep them out of the playoffs or anything, but you never know what's going to happen when they get to the Western Conference playoffs. And there's a lot of good teams in the West too. You still got the Nuggets in there. You got the Utah Jazz, who look phenomenal. So I don't think it's an automatic, but I think if I was, taken to Vegas, like gun to my head, who do you like out of the East and who do you like out of the West? Those are some pretty good bets, but I definitely don't think it's like up to level of like Cleveland, Golden State Warriors, or like Celtics, Lakers, like these are the two teams, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seems that way for the most part, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel as solid or as cemented in stone or whatever you want to call it, as like the Warriors and the Cavaliers did, I don't think either of those teams are going to sweep their way or get close to sweeping their way to the finals like we saw out of Cleveland and Golden State. Golden State just about swept their way to the finals one year, and same with Cleveland, whatever. They just were such a cut above the rest. I think it's hard to say right now, especially because the Lakers are dealing with injuries. But yeah, come time that they get into the playoffs and are full health, especially as long as did they finalize the Andre Drummond deal?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they did. You see that where Jeannie Buss took a picture of Drummond and compared it with her dad when he signed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's pretty cool.
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that. I'll have to check that out.
It's pretty neat. Some people said it puts a lot of pressure on Andre Drummond to perform, but I mean,
well, yeah, especially when they're putting pictures of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, arguably the top three greatest.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was pretty good, right? He was
kind of all right.
Yeah, solid dude.
But yeah, so I think with Andre Drummond on the team, it definitely helps solidify that. Then you get Anthony Davis, LeBron James coming back, full health. And then, when you move over to the Brooklyn Nets, who are just stacking all NBA players, I do think that's a little bit overstated. Blake Griffin is not who he used to be. LaMarcus Aldridge absolutely is not who he used to be. Doug Gottlieb actually said it the best. Quit looking at the names and start looking at the contracts. And that's going to tell you what the teams and the league believe where these players like talents fall, right? So, but yeah, I agree. If I had to put some money on it, I don't know that I even need a gun to my head to say. So I think, at the end of it, it comes down to the Lakers and the Nets. The biggest thing is going to be how they perform, and so is the playoff spotlight going to be a bit too much for Kevin Durant, who seems to get softer and softer with each passing year? And yes, I'm calling him out. Kevin Durant, you're soft as Charmin. I hope you see this. I hope I get some response, because I would love to have a conversation about how incredibly soft-skinned you are. And I think that in itself will keep you from leading another team who doesn't have a cool, level-headed guy like Steph Curry and a nucleus like the Warriors' big three had before you showed up. You and your crazy, soft inability to let anything go is going to keep your team from winning a championship. And that, my friend, is why no one will remember your name.
I don't agree with that it's going to keep him from winning a title. I don't know what his social media has to do with the guy has already
not just
proven
social
himself
media, though.
as
The guy
Finals MVP.
The guy allows him. He won Finals MVP when he was on the Warriors, when they were absolutely stacked and nobody could double cover.
The Nets are stacked on him. The Nets are stacked too.
I understand that.
I'm not saying he's going to do it by himself, but to say that he can't win a Finals MVP because he got in an argument with Michael Rappaport,
I just think his mental fortitude is too weak. I think if and when things start breaking down, when you do get to a point where, whether it be the Eastern Conference Finals or the finals themselves, when things start breaking down, and it really takes that mental toughness to push through maybe a bad shooting night, or maybe your players aren't scoring or putting it in the bucket the way that you need them to win. I mean, let's be real. Kevin Durant's not scoring 120 points by himself. So I think when you're in that position, it takes that mental toughness. And Kevin Durant is just not mentally tough. And that's so clear and apparent when he's constantly whining and arguing with anybody that has any type of criticism towards him. And not just whining and crying, using derogatory remarks, homosexual slurs. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a little child throwing a temper tantrum. I don't like that you said that about me. I can't stand it, dude.
Do you remember how big Reggie Miller versus Spike Lee was? And it's like the 2021 like social media, version of that. Kevin Durant versus Michael Rappaport. I mean, if Reggie and Spike were around today,
if they were on the same team, maybe, but like Rappaport's a Nets fan, isn't he? He's like arguing with the guy on his own team.
He's a Knicks fan.
Well, they showed the picture of him with the Nets jersey on at the Brooklyn game, so maybe he's just holding it down.
Just like the NBA player versus entertainer, feud. It's like when Reggie and Spike have been firing text back and forth and going at each other on social media. If their little thing happened now, it's like the Durant Rappaport's like just the weirdest rivalry of 2021 NBA.
Yeah.
But remember the last time we saw Kevin Durant as the undisputed leader of a team, they were blowing a 3-1 lead in the playoffs.
Right.
Oklahoma City, when he was in Golden State. I mean,
he was whining and crying because the Oklahoma paper came out and called him Mr. Unreliable.
Yeah. And, he was, the best player on Golden State, but Steph Curry was the leader. He was like the face of the franchise. He was the team leader. In Brooklyn, if this is Durant's team if he's the leader and, he just has Kyrie and Harden and Blake and all these guys around him, yeah, like we still haven't seen him undisputedly lead a team to a championship. We've seen him win 2 championships on a super loaded team where he was the best player, but it's a little different than being like the leader. So I think, yeah, there's something to be said for, what Austin's saying.
Yeah, but does I get the Harden and Kyrie thing, but does like Blake Griffin and like Austin said, Blake Griffin doesn't make it an extra super mega stack team because the guy wasn't doing anything in Detroit for the last couple of years. So like, I think he's a fine addition, but like, I see a lot of people want to have it both ways with Kevin Durant. It's like, not only does he have all the greatest players of all time on his team, but he also can't, like do it by himself kind of thing. Like it's got to be one way or the other, right? Like either the Nets are the greatest stack team ever, or they got some 3 really good players and then like some other older veterans who are at the end of their road, which is what I think a lot of them are. Going to win a championship. And we've seen this with other big stack teams before, right? Like Austin and I are Seahawks fans. Like we've seen it with the Seahawks. Like as soon as they got good, all of a sudden the 1-year contracts for coming out the woodworks, with the Warriors, like a bunch of people are doing the 1-year contracts because they want to get that championship at the end of the road. Like, I don't think that Blake Griffin is, puts him like it's into unfair realm in terms of like how stacked they are now.
Yeah, it's not.
And if that tells you anything,
Blake Griffin, could be the best player on a playoff team. Blake Griffin, it's, been injured a few times. Like he's not the same guy, but he's still very good. He's still very skilled. And I think having him as your number 4 is such a luxury. It's not like he's your 1 or your 2, like he's your 4 and LaMarcus Aldridge is your 5. I don't mean position on the court. I mean, like, order in on the totem pole, so to say. And so when you have guys that are that skilled in role player positions, that's what makes the team so scary because on any given night, Griffin or Aldridge, they could go off still, they've got it in them. The difference is they just don't do it consistently anymore.
But that's where I don't necessarily buy in because these are both guys that were on bad teams. The Detroit Pistons were bad. The Spurs have not been good lately, over the last couple of years. And so it would be one thing if Blake Griffin was still putting up 20 and 10 consistently just on a bad team, and this is a guy who's going to have to take that step back in a role player role, I could see that. And same with LaMarcus Aldridge, but they're not. They're guys that like have shown clear and obvious regression and have not just taken one, but multiple steps back from what they used to be during their all NBA times and all-star time in their primes. You know what I mean? And so they were role players that were filling starter position roles on the respective bad teams that they were on, who are now being relegated for what they should be doing. So, I mean, they very well could like exceed expectations or play really well into that role player position. But I don't know. I personally, I think it's Durant, Harden, and Kyrie. And then the other guys, I just don't think they move the needle that much. I think they're just other role player type guys that have recognizable names. So to me, it's no different than Karl Malone, Gary Payton, and Steve Nash joining the Lakers with Pau Gasol and Kobe Bryant. I think that had you maybe added like Chris Paul to that mix, then the Lakers were surefire going to make it happen. But again, because I remember back in that time reaching out to Dillon, dude, Steve Nash, Gary Payton, Karl Malone, like they've joined the Lakers. They're for sure.
They didn't all join at once, though. Those are 2 different teams.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah. Nash was with Dwight Howard.
Right. No, that's what I was just going to say. I remember both times reaching out to Dillon about those teams, and both times Dillon saying, I don't know, man. I remember Gary Payton, man, Seattle legend. Like, he's finally going to get a ring. He's still got some left in the tank. Karl Malone, blah, blah, blah. Dillon's like, yeah, but they're really not who they were. So I don't buy it. And then again, fast forward to the Dwight Howard, Steve Nash. Oh, Steve Nash for sure. This and that, this and that. And Dillon, again, reminding me, Austin, pump the brakes. Remember, these guys are old. They're not what they used to be. And you're just excited about a name, and look what happens. So, and not only that, But did we not find out last year with the Clippers what happens when you just add a bunch of superstars combined with superstar, or add a bunch of players, star names combined with superstars who are consistently taking advantage of load management and not playing night in and night out? Has this not proven that LeBron not load managing for however many years as he's not been doing it? Obviously, barring the injuries, but LeBron consistently playing as many games as he physically can and leading by example and being there for that team chemistry is far more important than Kawhi Leonard and Paul George pissing off the rest of their team because they're deciding when they want to play and don't want to play and things like that. So, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's really hard to say that they're for sure that talented or for sure going to make the playoffs because we watched that total collapse and meltdown. We did. We watched it last year with the Clippers when they were adding every big name that they possibly could, and they still fell short. They couldn't even beat the Nuggets. I mean, come on.
Hey, the Nuggets were good.
I'm glad you brought up the Clippers because they were the ones I'm looking at as before we say it's definitely going to be Nets Lakers. It was like everyone's written off the Clippers already. And I think we still have to consider the Clippers as like a real threat to make the finals and even win the whole thing coming out of the West. Like they've got the same Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, core that made them preseason championship favorites last season. They've added the pieces that they've added. I mean, like Rajon Rondo is a guy that we saw it again last year. He steps up in the playoffs, and I think he can kind of combat some of that playoff skittishness that Paul George has, right? He plays so under control. He's, got championships. Like
I love the Rondo trade, by the way.
That was a great move. He's a calming influence, like who's seen everything. I think exactly the kind of player and personality they needed. They got Serge Ibaka now. He's won a championship. Like he's been through the playoff wars. Tyronn Lue as a coach, he's won a championship. I think the people have kind of written them off because of what happened in the playoffs last year. And as a team, they're kind of where James Harden is individually in this, like, okay, we don't care what you do in the regular season, like show it in the playoffs.
And how the mighty have fallen. Kawhi Leonard went from like people were literally trying to put him in the top 10 greatest basketball player of all time. Of all time. Mm-hmm. And they lose in the playoffs against the Nuggets. And like, who's even talking about the Clippers?
Right.
Who's talking about Kawhi Leonard? Who's talking about this team at all?
People got burned last year, predicting big things for them, and they flopped. But this year, like, I'm not ready to write them off and dismiss them. Like, they're still like a real threat. And I think they can actually be the ones to knock off the Lakers more so than Denver or Utah. They added the veteran pieces that can get them through over that playoff hump. They got a good coach. They're tied for I think right now they're tied for second most wins in the league. They choked last year, but we've seen this in the last decade. I mean, the 2011 Mavs that beat the first iteration of that Miami team, they lost in the first round the previous year. And then the 2015 Warriors, they won their championship, but the previous year they lost in the first round. So, I mean, we've seen these teams that bounce back from early playoff exits, earlier than expected playoff exits, and, bounce back and won it all. And I think the Clippers could do that. And so they're the main reason why I'm not like, oh, it's definitely going to be like Lakers and Nets. So, but that is a lot of basketball for this week. We haven't talked yet about baseball, which starts by the time you all are listening to this episode. Baseball will be underway. The 2021 season is going to be back to 162 games, going to be back to fans being in the stadiums. I think, at least the limited capacity. It almost feels like we didn't have a season last year. Maybe not to that extreme, but it was like this shortened season. And, baseball is one of the first sports that tried to get something started, in the COVID pandemic.
It was the spring training season, bud.
Yeah, it was like a lot of people just didn't they just didn't invest and buy into, the 2020 MLB season. And this feels like, okay, now they're getting back to normal, like real baseball is back. So the question I want to ask is, going into this season, and I think, it's good that I'm getting both of you guys on here, because Austin is kind of a bigger baseball fan. I'd say Dillon's more like a, casual fan outside of his Seattle Mariners. Who is like the face of baseball, like the face of the whole sport, like LeBron is to the NBA, or, Brady or Mahomes is to the NFL? Who's that guy in baseball? When you think MLB, who comes to mind? Who's the top guy? Who's the most marketable, best, whatever, however you want to define it? So, Austin, you go.
So, I mean, this is kind of a tough one in general. A lot of people will say, your first names that typically will come to mind to your most casual fan is going to be Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, Mookie Betts. Your face of baseball right now, though, at 21 years old, is Fernando Tatis Jr. And many, including probably Dillon, has no idea who that is.
Not a clue.
Yeah,
so recognizable. Don't know.
Right,
Who
most regular watchers of the game, though, know who that is. And a lot of it is just because of what the MLB has done for him in terms of his media related stuff. So just in his endorsements alone, Fernando joins Derek Jeter and Bryce Harper as the only baseball players that are the sole focus of a national ad campaign from a long time MLB partner, being Gatorade. So he has his own national ad campaign with Gatorade via the MLB. He's also the youngest player to be on the cover of MLB The Show, which is huge. You can also see in his influence, he plays for the San Diego Padres, and they have slowly but surely become a very recognizable team. Toddy's also signed a 14-year, $340 million extension after only 140 MLB games. So that tells you just what a game changer this guy is. He's an incredibly talented shortstop. He has a lifetime OPS of 956. He was the 2020 Silver Slugger Award winner. And again, he signed a gigantic contract. So he is for sure, if not, but becoming the face of MLB. Now, that's where the problem lies, though, is how is it that the face of your league is in a position that even the most casual of fans probably don't know who he is, or have a hard time recognizing him or telling you that's who that guy is? How is it that this guy here is signing this huge contract, winning these awards, putting up the numbers, doing the advertisements, doing the endorsements, etc., but guys like Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, those kind of names are more recognizable than the MLB? So to me, that falls directly on the shoulders of Major League Baseball. They have an incredibly hard time. So with basketball, with the NBA, they market their players. That's where their bread and butter is. If you ever see ads and everything, it's all about the players. The NFL, they market their teams. Yes, they'll put players up on the stadiums and this and that, and they have their faces of the franchises. But at the end of the day, they market the teams, and that's where their bread and butter is. The MLB has no idea which direction they want to go, because if they try to go the NBA direction, they're going to piss off a lot of old school fans who think that, no player is bigger than the game or the team.
I think they try to market the sport.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, not the teams, not the player. Like, it's, baseball, and it's America's pastime, and it's,
But the problem is that the sport just isn't that popular anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The sport as a whole, with younger generations, is considered boring. It's not as fun, and everything. So yeah, you're right. They do try to market the sport, and now they're in this weird influx of while trying to do that, they're also trying to decide: do I market a player? Do I market a team? Whatever. And I don't think we'll ever see baseball die, but MLB is really, really struggling to stay what's the word I'm looking for? Relevant. While the NBA has surged past them in popularity, and the NFL has just become this ridiculous giant that will never go away at this point. The NFL as a whole is so insanely popular that it's done it all right. So but yeah, that's who I would say the face of the league is Fernando Tatis Jr.
I think you're right. It's like, you like NBA marketing is, it's LeBron versus Curry. NFL marketing is it's the Cowboys versus the Steelers. MLB marketing is like, it's baseball. Watch it because it's baseball. Don't you love baseball? You grew up playing baseball. Like, just watch it. Doesn't matter who's playing. And like, yeah, that doesn't work. Like, push your superstars. Okay, so yeah, Dillon, your take. Assuming that the face of baseball is not a member of the Seattle Mariners, who do you think?
I certainly hope it's not, for the sake of the league, dude.
They'd be in pretty bad turmoil if that was.
I am a very, very, very casual fan of baseball. My brother Austin is a big fan of baseball. I will pay attention to who's doing well in the standings. I do it like, somebody's dad. Like, I pick up the paper in the morning and go, oh, Mariners still aren't very good. Okay, cool. And I move on, Like, I don't watch very many regular season games. I'll catch a playoff game here and there. I'll definitely watch highlights, but I'm not a big baseball fan. So full disclosure. So my opinion might not mean anything. But for me, when I think of Major League Baseball, I think of Aaron Judge, just in terms of he's a really good player. He checks some boxes for me, right? He's a really good player. He's on a lot of commercials. He's got a big personality, and he's on one of the most popular teams in the league, right? The New York Yankees. It's kind of like being like quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys or something. Automatically, you're in the tops when it comes to most recognizable. So, and I think that's something that, as far as like being the face of the league, is like baseball's kind of funny like that, because you don't necessarily, like, a lot of baseball like fans argue that you don't have to necessarily be on a really good team in order to be like the face of the league. Like, I see a lot of people saying like Mike Trout or whatever, right? Like, and Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you say he'd only made the playoffs like a couple times in his long career? So that's kind of like, if he was the NFL, it's like, could Matt Stafford be the face of the NFL? Puts up huge numbers, no doubt, right? But like, the Lions have not had that much success. Therefore, he's not been in national spotlight enough. Like, they get Monday Night Football, they get Thursday Night Football, but like the Super Bowl, the NFC Championship game, the wild card weekend, divisional round, those are when the most eyeballs are on the TV watching. And I assume it'd be kind of the same with baseball, as far as like some people don't pay attention as much until the playoffs start. It happens with basketball, it happens with baseball, it happens with football, not everybody, but a lot of people are like that. Like, I have relatives who are like that with the NFL. I watch every down of the NFL. I have an uncle who's like, I start watching, I pay attention when it's close to the playoffs. I'm like, are you nuts? Every game matters, know, but that's just me. Some people are like, well, I don't pay attention until like this, and same with college basketball. Like, people don't watch until the tournament starts, right? So that's when you have the most national spotlight. So I think in order to be the face of something, you have to at least be in the postseason semi-consistently, at least. You can't have been there once kind of thing, or twice. So I don't know how much postseason success the Padres have had recently, Austin. You'd have to check that for me, but I don't think they're really, are they like a postseason team?
Yes.
While you look that up, Matt Stafford holds it down on Thanksgiving Thursday for like a decade. So I don't know what y'all talking about. Like, he
ace of the league, Matt Stafford,
staple of Thanksgiving NFL, that early morning Lions game that, like, you watch while you're cooking, and then you watch the Cowboys game while you're eating. Okay, so Padres, what was the answer on that? Like, are they a contender? Are they consistent playoff team? Like, are we gonna see Tatis in the postseason?
I think this silence is telling us all we need to know.
So the Padres in 2020, they ended with a winning record for the first time since 2010. They beat the Seattle Mariners, of course they did, 4-1 on September 20th to clinch their first postseason appearance since 2006. They defeated the St. Louis Cardinals in the 2020 National League Wild Card Series, and then the Padres won their first postseason series since the 1998 NLCS, Game 2 of their NL Wildcard Series was also the first home postseason win since Petco. Blah, blah, blah.
Doesn't it seem like it's a little early to say maybe he's the face of the league already? Like I could see up and coming.
They are starting to show signs of it.
Ascending, I could see, but like to say he's already the face of the league feels maybe a little too early.
Yeah, maybe. But like when you're doing things that guys like Derek Jeter are the only other ones to have done it, or Derek Jeter and Aaron Judge, etc. I mean, and again, that's where baseball's a little bit different, because baseball, just like with their farm system, just like with everything, they're preparers. So baseball will elevate a 21-year-old guy to the face of their league because they know and understand that this guy has all of the makings. He's a 5-tool player. He's starting to, his team is starting to show or have some postseason success. So we want to get out in front of this bull and grab it by the horns, and we'll make him the face of our league because he's destined to anyways. So,
all right, Amar, who's the face of baseball in your opinion?
Okay, I think among baseball people, Mike Trout is like the best in the game. So I think to them, he's the face of the game. Mookie Betts gets the best player on the defending champs, and he plays in a big market in LA. Tatis, I think, is like the future. I look at him like those Bolt 24 commercials that he's on. When those first started airing, and now they air like 50 times a day, but his would come on, and like my dad, he'd be like, "Who's that?" I'd be like, "Oh, it's Fernando Tatis. Who's he play for?" Right? He didn't have to do that when Zion Williamson first started showing up on commercials. Right. Zion Williamson is in a league that markets its young stars effectively. So yeah, I think Tatis is the future. I'd say I would agree with Dillon. Also, and I do weigh Dillon's opinion heavily because he's a casual fan. And when I think of who's the face in the league, it's who do the casual fans recognize? Who do they think's the face of the league when they think baseball? Because your baseball, hardcore fans and your baseball nerds. I mean, they're there. They're not going anywhere. But people who don't watch the game that much, that who they think's the face. That's a good argument. Aaron Judge, I'd say, he plays for the Yankees. He's a home run hitter, and that's still the easiest way to catch casual fans is home runs. And yeah, he's marketable. He's got his share of commercials and everything. So I think it's Aaron Judge. And especially even if the Yankees aren't good, they're still the Yankees, and they're still going to be on national TV a lot. And so he's going to be on all those ESPN ads, and he's going to be like in your face a lot. So,
well, lucky for him, the Yankees are good this season. So,
well, that's a very good point. Is that you're not going to see as many Padres games, even if they're good, on national television as you will see Yankees games.
Yeah.
So it's just less exposure. And I think a lot of people get hung up on, like you said, I think a lot of people get hung up on differentiating between best player in the league and face of the league. Because just because you're the face of the league doesn't mean you're automatically the best player, right? And vice versa.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You look at NBA. I mean, there are, very strong arguments you could make that Giannis is the best player, or Durant's the best player, or
Harden,
or Kawhi, or Harden. But LeBron's indisputably the face of the league because, it is more than just being the best player. You got to be one of the best. You got to be up there. But you think
there's a guy out there on Facebook who wants to make the argument that LeBron's the face of the NBA?
Oh, I'm sure there's
some dude in the comments right now is like, "There's no way."
There's no flopping Friday like LeBron going to be the face of the not my NBA.
There's someone that'll argue with you on Facebook right now that LeBron's not even a good player. So, any anti-LeBron argument you want to have, someone's willing to have it, for real.
I feel like NBA is just indisputable, right? Whereas NFL, you can make cases for different players. Baseball, you can certainly make cases, as is the segment right now. But basketball, it's like, why would you even bother? It's LeBron James.
Right. I mean, he's arguably the face of sports.
Right.
Overall,
of America.
But you know what? Judge for yourself, because baseball's starting soon. Like I said, by the time that you watch this episode, baseball will be underway. So I'm going to, as I tend to do at the beginning of every season, I'm really going to get into baseball this year, and I'm going to watch more than just the Mariners, and typically doesn't work out, but I'm really going to make the effort this year. But yeah, that kind of wraps up this, our question Q&A segment of the show. We're going to be coming back with Dillon's segment, his solo, his drum solo or guitar solo, or I don't know what your instrument of choice is. So Dillon is.
I don't play anything. I'm not musically inclined at all.
The DX right there.
I'm playing the accordion, bro.
Okay.
the keytar.
Also, since how we just mentioned baseball, as of this recording, 17 minutes ago, Francisco Lindor just agreed to a 10-year, $341 million deal with the Mets, which is the third largest contract in the MLB history and the largest for a shortstop.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The face of baseball, that guy,
Francisco Lindor.
I think he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated's like baseball preview this year, so that's a good argument. Maybe it's Francisco Lindor, but be that as it may, we're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, Dillon is going to have his harmonica solo or guitar solo or whatever he's going to do. So
more cowbell.
Yeah.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Enjoying Triple Overtime? Do you like hearing about professional wrestling as well? Well, then we have the show for you. From the makers of Triple Overtime as part of the Deal Industries worldwide YouTube channel comes May I Take This Bump? Tag team partners Dillon Divine and Matt Ecstatic relive their glory days and talk about the latest dealings in professional wrestling. Check it out.
UConn's women's basketball is back in the Final Four for a 13th straight season, which is an incredible run. And they've undoubtedly established themselves as one of the greatest sports dynasties of all time. Forget just women's basketball dynasties or just women's basketball programs. They're one of the best sports dynasties ever now. They're going to be seeking their 12th total national title, which is incredibly impressive. And I don't think this team really gets the praise as a lot of the other great teams in the history of sports. They've got the longest streak of wins, 111 straight, and then they've got the second longest streak of wins at 90 straight, which is just ridiculous. When you think about great dynasties, we think about like UCLA men's basketball, we think about USC baseball, the Boston Celtics, New York Yankees, Patriots, Alabama football, North Carolina women's soccer, who won 22 championships, which is also insane. But we got to mention UConn women's basketball too. And just the job that Gino Auriemma has done there as a head coach, the great players that he's been able to recruit and have helped him win, such as Sue Bird, Maya Moore. Now you got Paige Beckers, obviously, who looks like the next great star in women's college basketball. It's incredibly impressive. And I don't think enough people are talking about it in relation to those other teams. And I think they really need to get some more spotlight out there. So take it upon yourself to go back. And if you're a fan of basketball, as I am, watch this team. Well, read up on the history of this program. Like, they've been undoubtedly great for so long. And it's just a shame and a crime that really they're not getting the national recognition that other teams are. And, I know there's been a lot of things in the news about the discrepancies between like the men's workout gyms and the women's workout gyms as far as the NCAA tournament has gone. And this is just another one of those things, I think, where it's just because it's just not enough people are talking about it. I think that's a shame because they play a great game and it's a tremendous program. And I think more people need to take note of just how good this program, this team, this coach, and just the winning, just the type of winning that they're doing. They're doing it with class, right? And I know a lot of people are talking about this Baylor game where there was the big foul at the end. And a lot of people are saying like, hey, they got robbed. But the thing is like, in order to win a dynasty, in order to be in a dynasty, you're going to have some breaks here and there. And they're letting them play tough all game back and forth. And I think it's just as we talked about earlier in the show, it's coaching decisions, a lot of it too. Like Gino Auriemma, he always has the best decisions to go. And just 13 straight Final Fours, it's unheard of. I really can't even wrap my mind around it. So if you don't know about this team, go read up on the history of them, watch some clips, check out the players they've had, their history. Gino Auriemma has been there since 1985, and they have not missed an NCAA tournament appearance since 1989. Like this team is just automatic as automatic can get. It's death taxes and it's UConn women's basketball.
Thank you so much for that segment, Dillon. As always, it was incredible, insightful, and just love hearing what's on your mind, man. It was great. So we are going to get into our final thoughts before saying goodbye. If you have stuck it out with us this long, I would hope at some point you have hit that subscribe, like, and dropped a comment down there below. So if you haven't already, then make sure you subscribe, you like, and you drop a comment below. So we're going to go ahead and get into our final thoughts. Dillon, why don't you start off?
My final thought is that I thought Alabama UCLA was by far and away the most entertaining game of the NCAA men's tournament thus far. Like just the drama at the end, the overtime, the kid who made the shot, the three to tie it for Alabama, and then UCLA overcoming it. Like it was just a great back and forth game. So it seems like every game UCLA has played has been really good, but that's been my favorite thus far.
And I will just because Austin opened the door by bringing up Andre the Giant in pro wrestling earlier, I'm gonna go back to pro wrestling. We're gonna consider that a sport today, and just wanted to let everyone know that I did launch my own pro wrestling blog today. It's called goodtroubleinparadise.com. We'll throw the link in the show notes or something, but check that out, give it a read, give me some support, let me know what you think, feedback, whatnot. That's my pro wrestling site. It's now live, and hopefully going to be bringing some more good content for y'all in addition to this podcast and writing on that site. So that is my final thought for the week, and I'll go to you, Austin.
My final thought of the week is a huge kudos to Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks organization for putting their pride aside and understanding that Russell Wilson is the face of their franchise and a guy that you want to keep happy, which they have done once again. Keep in mind, they brought Gabe Jackson in, they re-signed Chris Carson. They brought in Garrett Everett, very good, soon-to-be superstar tight end. And as of today, this recording, they just agreed to a contract extension with Tyler Lockett on a 4-year, $69.2 million deal that includes $37 million guaranteed. So kudos to you guys. As always, it would seem that like most every season, the whole Russell Wilson's leaving was a bit overstated. As I constantly said, he played the hand that he had, and put them in a position to start making moves to protect him and put him, the offense, in a better position. So good job, Seattle Seahawks. Good job, John Schneider, and especially good job, Pete Carroll, for making sure that you know where your bread and butter's at, brother, and that's Russell Wilson. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode, the 4th episode of Triple Overtime. Much love to all of you. Dillon, Amar, I appreciate you guys, and everyone else, stay good, stay healthy. Bye.